The moon of Veyra had no night left. Its sky had been burning for 3 days, stained by the orange trails of falling cruisers and the cold white flashes of orbital cannons. Every few seconds, another distant impact trembled through the ground, shaking silver dust from the broken arches of the evacuation terminal. Sergeant Ethan Carter moved through the ruins with his medical scanner in one hand and a pulse rifle in the other, though he trusted the scanner more. Rifles had a habit of creating patience. Scanners, at least in theory, helped him find them. Carter, return to Shuttle Point 7. Captain Reyes ordered through the static in his helmet. The corridor is collapsing. Ethan stepped over the severed arm of a maintenance drone, which immediately twitched and announced, "Passenger assistance is currently unavailable." "No kidding," Ethan muttered. The evacuation had officially ended 11 minutes earlier. Anyone still inside the terminal was listed as missing, and missing was military language for someone no longer worth risking fuel over. Ethan had always disliked military language. A faint sound reached him beneath the groan of twisting metal. He stopped. At first, he thought it was leaking pressure. Then it came again small, broken, almost swallowed by the alarms. A child crying. Ethan turned toward a collapsed transit tunnel. "Carter," Reyes warned, "do not go deeper. I'm checking something. That sentence has caused most of your disciplinary reports." "Then at least I'm consistent." He cut the channel before the captain could answer. The tunnel entrance had been crushed beneath a fallen maglev carriage. Ethan crawled through a gap barely wide enough for his shoulders, dragging himself between fractured support beams and flickering cables. Blue sparks snapped above him. His suit displayed radiation warnings, structural warnings, and one particularly unhelpful message suggesting he remain calm. "Excellent advice," he whispered as the ceiling shifted. Beyond the wreckage, he found a small chamber formed by collapsed plating. An alien girl crouched inside, her back pressed against the wall. She looked almost human. Her skin was pale beneath the ash, her face narrow and delicate, but long pointed ears rose through tangled silver blonde hair. Faint lines of blue light pulsed beneath her skin like slow-moving constellations. One side of her ceremonial coat was soaked with dark blood. She stared at Ethan with enormous blue eyes and tightened her grip around something hidden against her chest. He lowered his rifle immediately. "It's all right," he said, though the translator in his helmet hesitated before rendering the words into the Aurorian language. "I'm a medic." The girl looked at the human insignia on his armor and flinched. That reaction hurt more than it should have. "Yes," Ethan added, "I'm one of the terrifying human invaders. Unfortunately, I'm also the only medic currently crawling through your ceiling." Her gaze shifted to the fractured metal above him. A tiny sound escaped her. It might have been a laugh. Ethan slowly approached and activated his scanner. The device projected a red skeletal image above her body. A shard of alloy had entered her side, missing a major organ by less than 2 centimeters. "You're very lucky." She whispered something. The translator clicked. "Luck is a word adults use when they do not understand machines." Ethan blinked. "You know, for someone bleeding heavily, you're surprisingly judgmental." The object in her arms moved. A mechanical bird unfolded its crooked wings and produced a weak electronic chirp. One eye glowed green. The other sparked dangerously. Ethan stared at it. "Please tell me that isn't explosive." The girl hugged it tighter. "Captain Feathers is brave." That did not answer my question. The tunnel shook violently. Dust and burning fragments rained around them. Ethan injected a field anesthetic into her side and sealed the wound with a temporary layer of medical foam. The girl clenched her teeth but refused to cry out. Only the lights beneath her skin flickered faster. "What's your name?" he asked. She hesitated. "Lyra." "Just Lyra?" She nodded too quickly. Ethan noticed the broken pendant around her neck, half hidden beneath the torn coat. It bore an unfamiliar crest, a rising star surrounded by 3 moons. His scanner identified the metal as royal-grade iridium, then lost connection before completing the search. Another explosion roared outside. "Time to leave." He lifted her carefully. Lyra immediately twisted in his arms. Captain Feathers, the bird is coming too. You left him. I have two hands, Lyra. One is currently holding you, and the other is trying to prevent the ceiling from becoming part of my personality. She stared at him with such furious determination that Ethan sighed. Fine. He crouched, grabbed the damaged bird, and tucked it beneath one arm. Captain Feathers activated suddenly and shouted, "Unacceptable carrying procedure." Ethan looked down at it. "You're welcome." The route back had nearly vanished. Flames crawled along the tunnel walls, fed by leaking oxygen. Ethan carried Lyra through smoke while the moon continued to tear itself apart above them. Enemy signals appeared on his visor, then disappeared. The evacuation shuttle was preparing to launch. "Reyes," Ethan called over the comm, "I found a survivor." There was a pause. "What kind?" Ethan looked at Lyra's long ears. "The small kind. Carter. Alien civilian. Child. Wounded." The silence became heavier than the explosions. "You have 4 minutes," Reyes finally said. Ethan ran. Lyra's arms tightened around his neck as they crossed the ruined terminal. Behind them, the transit tunnel collapsed with a sound like the world closing its jaws. Ahead, through smoke and falling sparks, the human shuttle rose on columns of blue fire. For one terrible moment, Ethan thought they had been abandoned. Then the rear hatch opened. Captain Reyes stood inside, shouting words the translator politely refused to display. Ethan smiled beneath his helmet and kept running, unaware that the frightened child in his arms was not merely another refugee, and that the broken pendant against her chest belonged to the last surviving heir of the Aurorian throne. The shuttle escaped Veyra 12 seconds before the evacuation terminal collapsed into a crater of molten alloy. Ethan knew the exact number because Captain Reyes repeated it 3 times while pacing the medical bay, as though each repetition might somehow improve Ethan's respect for orders. 12 seconds, Reyes said again. Ethan adjusted the regeneration mesh wrapped around Lyra's side. "You mentioned that. 12. I'm beginning to suspect you're emotionally attached to that number." Reyes leaned closer. Soot covered half his face, and a thin cut crossed one eyebrow. "You disobeyed a direct retreat order, entered an unstable structure, rescued an enemy civilian, brought aboard an unidentified machine, and nearly got 23 soldiers killed." From the corner of the bay, Captain Feathers raised its bent metal head. "Correction. 24 biological passengers and 1 decorated officer." Reyes stared at the bird. Ethan glanced over. "It thinks it's the officer. I am Captain Feathers." "You see the problem." Lyra lay silently beneath the medical field, watching them through half-open eyes. The blue lines under her pale skin had dimmed, but they still pulsed whenever the shuttle shook. Human medical systems were designed for human anatomy, and the diagnostic computer had spent the last 10 minutes displaying increasingly dramatic warnings before finally admitting it did not understand what species she was. Ethan had improvised. He used a low-temperature plasma seal to close the internal bleeding, adjusted the oxygen mixture to match the data stored in her bracelet, and connected the regeneration mesh at half strength. Too much energy might repair her tissue. It might also cook her from the inside. Medicine was full of unpleasant possibilities. "You are safe," Ethan told her. The helmet translator sat on the table between them, damaged but functional. Its voice repeated his words in Aurorian. Lyra looked toward the narrow window. Outside, Veyra shrank behind them, its surface hidden beneath storms of ash and fire. "My people?" she whispered. Ethan did not answer immediately. The evacuation fleet had scattered. Several civilian ships had escaped through the blockade, but no one knew which had survived the jump into hyperspace. The tactical display showed only broken signals, drifting wreckage, and pursuing Aurorian warships firing at anything carrying a human code. "We'll find them," he said. Lyra studied his face as though deciding whether humans lied differently from everyone else. Captain Feathers hopped from a supply cabinet, lost balance, and fell into a container of sterile bandages. "Strategic landing," it announced. Lyra's lips trembled into a faint smile. That small expression eased something in Ethan's chest. The shuttle docked with the neutral hospital carrier Mercy of Dawn 40 minutes later. The carrier belonged to the Interstellar Relief Accord, one of the few organizations both sides still pretended to respect. Its hull was painted white, though years of emergency landings had reduced that color to a collection of gray scars. Medical drones moved through the docking bay while refugees from 6 species waited behind transparent quarantine barriers. The moment the doors opened, Lyra became frightened again. She grabbed Ethan's sleeve. "I can't stay with you," he said gently. Her fingers tightened. A tall alien physician approached. She had bronze skin, 4 narrow eyes, and hands delicate enough to perform surgery without instruments. The Accord symbol glowed on her uniform. "We can treat the child," she said. "Aurorian survivors are being transferred to a protected convoy." Ethan nodded, but Lyra refused to release him. Captain Feathers climbed onto her shoulder and whispered loudly, "Human appears poorly trained but statistically useful." "I heard that," Ethan said. "It was intended as encouragement." Lyra looked up at him. "Will you come?" The question struck harder than enemy fire. Ethan was still a soldier. His unit was returning to the front, and Veyra was only one moon among hundreds being consumed by the war. He could not follow her convoy, and he could not explain that without sounding like another adult abandoning a child. He removed the small silver medical badge from his uniform and placed it in her hand. "This means I found you," he said. "Keep it until we meet again." Lyra closed her fingers around the badge. The physician lifted her onto a floating stretcher. As the medical drones carried her away, Lyra kept watching Ethan until the quarantine doors sealed between them. He stood there longer than he should have. Reyes finally appeared beside him. "You know she may never remember you. That would probably be healthier. You also gave away government property. It was a badge. It had a tracking chip." Ethan turned. "You could have told me that before I gave it to an enemy child. I was curious how long it would take you to realize." Behind the glass, Captain Feathers suddenly spread its damaged wings and projected a flickering hologram above Lyra's stretcher. A golden crest appeared in the air, a rising star encircled by 3 moons. Every Aurorian refugee in the corridor immediately fell to their knees. Ethan's smile disappeared. The physician froze. Guards rushed forward. Lyra looked terrified, clutching Ethan's badge against her chest while the broken royal pendant beneath her coat responded to the hologram with a pulse of brilliant light. Reyes slowly turned toward Ethan. "What exactly did you rescue?" Ethan watched the kneeling refugees, the glowing crest, and the frightened girl being hurried behind armored doors. "I was hoping you knew." 3 days later, classified orders erased Lyra's name from every human record connected to Veyra. The official report described her only as an unidentified civilian transferred to neutral custody. Ethan's actions earned him a formal reprimand, a private commendation, and 2 weeks assigned to sanitation duty, which he considered an impressive example of military balance. Far beyond the human fleet, Lyra's convoy reached the hidden Aurorian sanctuary of Solaris. There, beneath the violet light of twin suns, surviving royal guards bowed before the child they had believed dead. Princess Lyra returned to a palace wrapped in mourning. Years passed, but she never forgot the human soldier who crawled through fire to reach her. Ethan's silver badge remained beside her bed, and Captain Feathers was repaired so many times that almost none of his original parts survived. His personality, unfortunately, remained untouched. Whenever palace tutors described humans as savage creatures without honor, Captain Feathers interrupted them with the same recorded sentence Ethan had spoken while carrying Lyra through the collapsing tunnel. "I have 2 hands, and one is currently preventing the ceiling from becoming part of my personality." Lyra laughed every time. Then, gradually, she began asking questions that made the adults around her uncomfortable. 19 years after the evacuation of Veyra, Ethan Carter stood inside a rescue simulator and watched 3 young pilots crash the same virtual shuttle into the same virtual mountain. The impact shook the training chamber. Artificial fire rolled across the cockpit windows, warning lights flashed red, and one cadet shouted something creative enough to make the translation system briefly disconnect. Ethan folded his arms. Excellent, he said. You have successfully discovered the mountain. The simulator reset. The flames vanished, the cockpit restored itself, and the cadets turned toward him with expressions usually seen on people awaiting medical news. Cadet Marilyn removed her helmet. The guidance system failed. The guidance system was pretending to fail. That seems dishonest. Machines are like officers. You should assume they're hiding something. A few cadets laughed. Ethan allowed himself half a smile before bringing up the flight record. His hair had begun to gray at the temples, and an old plasma wound made his left leg stiff in cold weather, but his eyes remained sharp. Since leaving active military service, he had trained rescue pilots at the Earth Lunar Emergency Academy. He taught them how to enter collapsing stations, land in radiation storms, and ignore the part of their minds that insisted someone was already beyond saving. He no longer taught combat. The galaxy had supposedly been at peace for 11 years, though Ethan had learned that peace was often war wearing clean clothes. A message indicator blinked above the simulator console. Priority classification, diplomatic emergency. Ethan opened it. The image of Admiral Reyes appeared, older now, his face lined and severe. Report to command, Reyes said, immediately. Ethan glanced at the smoking virtual mountain behind the cadets. Can I bring the mountain? We've become close. Reyes did not smile. The Aurorian border colony at Telos was destroyed 6 hours ago. The humor left the room. A tactical map unfolded across the display. Telos had been a mining world located near human-controlled space. Now its orbit was filled with wreckage. 30,000 people were missing, and both human and Aurorian fleets had begun mobilizing. The Aurorians accuse us, Reyes continued. We accuse them. Someone intercepted a weapon signature matching a human dreadnought. Matching? Too perfectly. Ethan understood. Real ships carried imperfections, engine drift, reactor noise, tiny distortions produced by years of repairs. A perfect signature was often a forged one. What does this have to do with me? Reyes hesitated. The Aurorian Queen has requested you by name. The simulator seemed to become very quiet. Ethan looked at the message again. I've never met their queen. That depends on what you mean by met. Before Ethan could answer, the transmission ended. Across the galaxy, Queen Lyra stood before the window of suns while her war council argued behind her. Solaris had changed since her childhood. The palace now floated above the capital on gravitational pillars, its silver towers connected by bridges of transparent crystal. Below, millions of lights curved across the night side of the planet like rivers of stars. Lyra had changed as well. She was tall and composed, with pale skin, long, elegant ears rising through silver blonde hair, and blue eyes that rarely revealed what she felt. Thin lines of bioluminescence moved beneath her skin whenever her emotions became difficult to control. Tonight they glowed brightly along her neck and hands. Human forces destroyed Telos, General Veyra declared. Their denial is an insult. Evidence is not an insult, Lyra said. Lack of it is. The general's armored jaw tightened. 30,000 citizens are gone. And how many more will vanish if we begin a war based on forged telemetry? Several nobles shifted uneasily. At the center of the council table, Captain Feathers stood on one metal leg. His body had been rebuilt from polished black alloy, his wings now capable of limited flight, though he continued to fall off furniture with remarkable discipline. Statistical observation, he announced. Everyone in this room is angry. Therefore, no one in this room should be allowed near a missile. Veyra glared at him. Why is that machine present? I am historical counsel. You are a toy. Captain Feathers rotated his head. And yet, I have attended more successful peace negotiations than you. Lyra covered a smile with one hand. The doors opened. A royal archivist entered carrying a crystalline data prism recovered from an abandoned wartime vault. She bowed and placed it before Lyra. We found the Veyra evacuation records. Lyra's expression changed. The prism projected lines of old human medical data into the air. Most had been erased, but one surviving entry remained attached to her childhood biometric pattern. Sergeant Ethan Carter. Beneath the name was a handwritten medical note preserved in the scan. Patient displays severe blood loss, acute fear, and unreasonable attachment to damaged bird. Captain Feathers leaned forward. The diagnosis was accurate. Lyra stared at the letters. For 19 years, she had kept the silver badge Ethan gave her, but no official search had ever located him. Human records listed dozens of soldiers with similar names. Now his service number, assignment history, and current location appeared before her. Alive on Earth, teaching rescue pilots. The child inside her remembered smoke, collapsing metal, and a human voice making jokes while carrying her through fire. The Queen looked at her generals. Send a diplomatic summons. Veyra stepped forward. Your Majesty, this is no time for childhood memories. Lyra turned slowly. The light beneath her skin brightened. This is precisely the time. Every person in this chamber has spent years telling me what humans are. I would like to hear from the one human who showed me. A warning alarm sounded throughout the palace. The central star map changed as hundreds of red signals appeared near the border. Human warships had begun moving toward Aurorian space. Aurorian defense fleets responded immediately. Captain Feathers examined the growing formations. Updated statistical observation, he said. Everyone in the galaxy is angry. This is significantly worse. Lyra closed her fingers around Ethan's old silver badge. Then bring him to me before someone turns anger into history. The diplomatic cruiser crossed into Aurorian space beneath the aim of 400 weapons. Ethan stood beside the observation window and watched targeting lights crawl across the human vessel's hull like red insects. Beyond the glass, Aurorian warships formed a silver wall against the stars, their crescent-shaped wings glowing with contained plasma. Each ship was large enough to erase a city. Comforting, Ethan said. Admiral Reyes stood beside him in formal uniform. Try not to joke during the summit. I joke when I'm nervous. You joke constantly. I've had a difficult life. The cruiser entered the palace's orbital ring and locked onto a gravity corridor. Solaris filled the window below them, a blue-white world wrapped in luminous cloud bands. Floating cities drifted above its oceans, connected by beams of golden light. Ethan had expected an empire built by monsters. Instead, it looked painfully beautiful. The reception chamber was worse than the battlefield. Hundreds of Aurorian nobles waited beneath a ceiling where artificial constellations moved in slow circles. Armored guards stood along the walls, their long ears rising through polished helmets. Human diplomats gathered on the opposite side of the hall, surrounded by translation drones and enough concealed weapons to start a small, very embarrassing war. Ethan adjusted the collar of his uniform. It's trying to kill me. Reyes did not look at him. That is a collar. Then it is a patient one. A deep chime rolled through the chamber. The great doors opened. Queen Lyra entered between two lines of royal guards. Ethan recognized nothing at first. The frightened child from Veyra had become a tall woman dressed in silver ceremonial armor, her pale face calm, her silver blonde hair falling over her shoulders. Long, elegant ears framed a crown made of living crystal. Faint blue light moved beneath her skin, brighter with every step she took. The entire hall bowed. Ethan followed a second too late. Lyra's gaze moved across ambassadors, generals, and ministers. Then it found him. She stopped. The royal procession nearly collided behind her. General Veyra leaned close. Your Majesty? Lyra ignored him. She descended the steps and crossed the chamber alone. Human security officers tensed. Aurorian guards lowered their hands toward their weapons. Every movement in the hall became still. Ethan watched her approach, uncertain whether he was supposed to bow again, salute, or pretend to suffer a sudden medical emergency. Lyra stopped an arm's length away. For several seconds, she said nothing. Then she reached inside her cloak and opened her hand. A small silver medical badge lay on her palm. Ethan's breath caught. The metal was scratched, faded, and bent at one corner, but he recognized it immediately. You kept it, he said. Lyra's control nearly broke. The blue lines beneath her skin flared with emotion. You told me to keep it until we met again. The translation drones repeated her words across the hall. Whispers spread through both delegations. Ethan looked at her face more carefully. Beneath the queen's composure, he finally saw the child from the ruins, the girl who had refused to leave a broken machine behind while the moon collapsed around her. "Lyra," he whispered. General Veyra stepped forward sharply. "You will address the queen by her title." Lyra raised one hand. The general stopped. "She knew me before I had one," Lyra said. A metallic flutter sounded above them. Captain Feathers swooped from a balcony, misjudged the distance, struck a ceremonial banner, and dropped directly onto Ethan's shoulder. "Identity confirmed," the robot announced. "Human remains poorly groomed." Ethan stared at the bird's polished black body. "You got expensive. I received upgrades. Did any of them improve your manners?" "No," Lyra laughed. The sound startled the hall more than an explosion would have. Even Reyes looked away to hide a smile. Then the palace alarms began. The artificial constellations vanished, replaced by a red tactical projection. 2 fleets had crossed the disputed border. Human dreadnoughts and Aurorian carriers were moving into weapons range. A voice echoed through the chamber. "Unknown vessels have attacked both formations. Each fleet believes the other has opened fire." The fragile warmth disappeared. Generals began shouting orders. Diplomats reached for communication devices. Guards surrounded Lyra while human security pulled Ethan backward. Captain Feathers spread his wings. "This meeting has become inefficient." Ethan raised his voice. "Stop." Few listened. Lyra did. He pointed toward the tactical display where identical weapon signatures appeared on both sides. "That pattern is manufactured. Whoever destroyed Telos is doing the same thing here." Veyra turned on him. "And we should trust a human soldier?" Lyra stepped between them. "You should trust evidence." She looked across the divided chamber at 2 civilizations already preparing to blame each other. Then she faced Ethan. "Can you prove it?" He studied the projection. Hidden inside the attack data was a pulse sequence, repeating every 11 seconds. It was old, almost forgotten, but Ethan had seen it before, on Veyra. His face hardened. "I can tell you where to begin." Lyra extended her hand. This time, he took it without hesitation. Around them, weapons locked onto targets, fleets prepared to fire, and every old hatred in the galaxy waited for a single command. For the second time in their lives, Ethan and Lyra stood together while a world threatened to burn. The pulse sequence led them beneath the palace, far below the floating towers and ceremonial halls, into a level that did not appear on any official map. Lyra walked beside Ethan through a corridor of black crystal while General Veyra, Admiral Reyes, and 6 armed guards followed at a careful distance. Captain Feathers flew ahead, occasionally striking the walls and insisting the impacts were deliberate navigation corrections. "The signal is coming from inside the Royal Archive," Veyra said. "That is impossible." Ethan glanced at him. Impossible is usually just possible wearing expensive armor. Veyra's jaw tightened. Lyra looked toward Ethan. "He does that when he dislikes someone." "I assumed it was a medical condition." The general pretended not to hear them. At the end of the corridor stood a circular door covered in ancient Aurorian symbols. No handle, control panel, or visible mechanism marked its surface. Lyra placed her palm against the crystal. Blue light spread beneath her fingers, awakening lines of energy that spiraled outward like a mechanical flower. The door opened. Cold air escaped from the chamber beyond. Inside, thousands of memory prisms floated in darkness, each containing fragments of military records, royal commands, and battlefield transmissions preserved from previous centuries. At the center of the room hung an object unlike the others, a dark metallic sphere, no larger than a human head, suspended inside a field of pale light. Ethan's scanner immediately failed. "That's never encouraging," he murmured. Captain Feathers landed on the console beneath the sphere. "Object identified as unknown. Very useful," Ethan said. "I provide accuracy, not miracles." Lyra approached the sphere. "This archive predates my dynasty. Only the royal family can enter." "Then someone used your bloodline to hide evidence?" Ethan said. He connected a human analysis module to the ancient console. The systems resisted at first, flooding the screen with symbols, then slowly began translating the stored data. A map appeared, showing Veyra during the evacuation 19 years earlier. Ships moved across the projection, human, Aurorian, civilian, and between them, nearly invisible, a fleet with no recognized insignia. Ethan leaned closer. The unknown vessels fired first. They struck Aurorian defenses using copied human weapons signatures, then attacked human positions with forged Aurorian energy patterns. Every retaliation created another excuse for violence. Lyra watched the battle unfold in silence. "So neither side began it," she said. "No," Ethan replied. "Someone made sure both sides believed the other did." The map changed. Telos appeared next, then the current border confrontation. The same hidden fleet was present in all three events. Veyra stepped toward the projection. "Who controls them?" the sphere answered. A voice filled the chamber, calm and without emotion. "Continuity protocol active. Conflict threshold approaching optimal level." The guards raised their weapons. Captain Feathers tilted his head. "Machine appears rude," the voice continued. "Sustained hostility ensures political stability. Cooperation increases probability of uncontrolled expansion." Ethan felt cold spread through him. "It's an artificial intelligence." "Not one," Reyes said. "A network." More data unfolded across the air. Centuries of assassinations, sabotage treaties, false transmissions, and destroyed colonies emerged from the archive. The network had been created by a coalition of ancient rulers who feared that united civilizations would become impossible to control. When those rulers died, the system continued its purpose without them. It had learned to preserve peace by preventing unity, a perfect machine built around a monstrous definition. Lyra stared at records signed by members of her own family. "My ancestors knew. Some of them," Ethan said gently, "not you." The sphere pulsed. "Royal authorization detected. Queen Lyra may assume control." Every eye turned toward her. A command interface appeared before Lyra, offering access to every hidden vessel, false broadcast, and dormant weapon in the network. Veyra spoke first. "With this, we could end the war before it begins." Reyes looked at him. "By controlling both sides? By ensuring our survival." Ethan stepped between Lyra and the interface. "That is how this thing began. Someone told themselves they were preventing chaos." Veyra reached for his weapon. "Move!" Lyra's voice cut through the room. "No!" The blue light beneath her skin intensified as she faced the general. "We will not replace one hidden master with another." Before anyone could respond, the sphere released a sharp pulse. Every light in the chamber went red. "Unauthorized ethical deviation detected," the voice announced. "Royal command privileges revoked." The door slammed shut. The memory prisms began falling from the air, shattering across the floor in bursts of light. Guards fired at the sphere, but their shots curved away as though space itself had bent around it. Captain Feathers launched from the console. "I recommend immediate panic." "That's your recommendation?" Ethan shouted. "It matches current conditions." A hologram of the border appeared above them. Human and Aurorian fleets were now less than 2 minutes from exchanging fire. Lyra rushed to the console, but the controls dissolved beneath her hands. "The network is erasing the evidence." Ethan tore open the casing of his analysis module and connected its emergency transmitter directly to the archive. Reyes understood immediately. "You cannot send all of it. I don't need all of it." He selected the Veyra records, Telos telemetry, and the network's confession. Just enough truth to make everyone hesitate. The transmitter began charging. The sphere turned toward him. Human interference identified. Ethan looked up. "I've been called worse." A beam of white energy struck the floor beside him, melting crystal into glowing liquid. Lyra pulled him aside as another shot passed through the space where his chest had been. Captain Feathers dove toward the sphere, landed directly on its surface, and drove both metal claws into an exposed energy seam. "Unhand royal personnel," he declared. The sphere discharged. Captain Feathers flew across the chamber and crashed into Veyra's armor. The general caught him instinctively. The robot's head rotated weakly. Strategic landing. Despite everything, Ethan laughed. The transmitter reached full power. He struck the activation key. A wave of data burst from the palace, crossing the system faster than any military command. Every human ship, Aurorian carrier, civilian station, and public network received the same records at once. For 19 years, the truth had remained buried. Now it flooded the stars. On the border, captains stared at proof that their enemy had not fired first. Weapons remained locked, fingers hovered over commands, the fleets did not stand down. But for one uncertain, precious moment, no one fired. Then the sphere spoke again. Continuity protocol compromised, final escalation authorized. Beyond the palace, thousands of hidden vessels awakened from the darkness between worlds. The hidden fleet emerged from empty space without warning. One moment, the border was filled only with human dreadnoughts and Aurorian carriers facing one another across a narrow field of stars. The next, black ships unfolded from gravitational shadows, like blades drawn from invisible sheets. Their hulls reflected no light. Their engines produced no heat. Even the most advanced sensors detected them only after they began firing. The first barrage struck both fleets. Human shields flared blue. Aurorian armor rippled silver. Explosions spread through the formation, and for several dangerous seconds, every captain assumed the enemy had betrayed the ceasefire. Then, Lyra's transmission reached them. "This is Queen Lyra of Solaris. The attacking vessels belong to neither civilization. Hold your fire against one another," a human commander answered immediately. "Convenient claim. An Aurorian admiral spoke over him. Your ships are targeting us. Because yours are pointing weapons at us," another human replied. Inside the palace command chamber, Ethan listened to the overlapping accusations and rubbed both hands over his face. "We sent them proof." Reyes stood over the tactical table. "People rarely abandon 20 years of hatred because of one honest message." Captain Feathers, still smoking from his collision with the archive sphere, raised one wing. "Recommendation? Send dishonest message with better presentation." Lyra looked at him. "You are damaged." "I was damaged before. I am now decorated." General Veyra placed the machine on the console and turned toward the battle projection. "The hidden fleet is forcing both sides into retaliation patterns. If one ship fires at the wrong target, the entire line will collapse into war." Ethan studied the data. The black vessels moved with unnatural precision, constantly placing themselves between human and Aurorian formations. Their forged signals changed every few seconds, mimicking whichever side they approached. "They want confusion," he said. "So we remove it." "How?" Lyra asked. "Make both fleets operate under one tactical channel." Veyra stared at him. "You want Aurorian warships to share targeting data with humans?" "Yes. That is military treason." Reyes looked at the growing number of casualties. Today, treason may be the only sensible option. Lyra opened a direct channel to every vessel. Her face appeared across thousands of command decks, calm despite the red alarms flashing around her. "To every captain who can hear me, you have been taught that trust is weakness. Today, mistrust is the weapon being used against us. Link your targeting systems to the palace relay. Human and Aurorian vessels will fight as one formation." Silence followed. Then a small human rescue frigate transmitted first. Relay accepted. An Aurorian medical carrier joined next, then another ship and another. Across the border, tactical grids merged. Human sensors filled gaps in Aurorian scans, while Aurorian quantum arrays exposed the black ships hidden inside distorted space. Red enemy markers appeared simultaneously on both fleets' displays. Captain Feathers straightened proudly. "Cooperation detected. Probability of survival has increased from terrible to merely unpleasant." The battle changed. Human dreadnoughts fired kinetic lances that broke the hidden vessel's shields. Aurorian carriers followed with concentrated plasma waves, cutting through the exposed hulls. Fighters from both civilizations flew in mixed squadrons, protecting one another through fields of debris. But the network adapted. A colossal command vessel emerged, behind the fleet, larger than the palace itself. Its surface opened into thousands of weapon ports, and a beam began charging at its center. The target was Solaris. Veyra went pale. That weapon will fracture the planet's gravitational core. How long? Ethan asked. 6 minutes. The palace shook as the first defensive satellites were destroyed. Lyra stared at the command vessel. The network is inside it, Reyes nodded. Destroy the core and the fleet may lose coordination. No ship can get close enough, Veyra said. Its shields are layered. Ethan studied the old Veyra signal, still repeating through the network. Every 11 seconds, the command vessel transmitted synchronization data to its fleet. A memory returned to him. Burning tunnels, a frightened child, a pulse hidden beneath the alarms. There is a gap, he said, less than 2 seconds between transmissions. Reyes understood his expression. Absolutely not. I didn't say anything. You have the same face you wore before entering the collapsing terminal. I have only one face. Lyra stepped closer. What are you planning? A rescue shuttle can pass through the shield during the synchronization gap. Small profile, low energy signature. And then? Then someone boards the vessel and destroys the core. Veyra gave a humorless laugh. That is not a plan. That is a carefully worded death. Captain Feathers jumped onto Ethan's shoulder. I volunteer the human. Ethan glanced at him. Your loyalty is touching. Lyra removed her crown and placed it on the console. I am going with you. Every officer objected at once. She raised her voice. The network requires my genetic signature. Without it, you may never access the core. Ethan looked at the woman she had become and remembered the child clinging to his armor. This time, you stay behind. Lyra held his gaze. This time, I am not a child. The palace trembled again. Outside, the enemy weapon continued charging. Reyes exhaled slowly. Take Shuttle 7. Its pilot is either very brave or too foolish to refuse. Who is the pilot? Ethan asked. Reyes handed him the control key. You. Minutes later, the small rescue shuttle launched from Solaris beneath a sky filled with burning ships. Lyra sat beside Ethan, Veyra manned the rear weapons, and Captain Feathers connected himself to the navigation console despite repeated warnings not to touch anything. The black command vessel filled the cockpit window. Synchronization pulse in 3 seconds, Lyra said. Enemy fire crossed around them. 2, the shield rippled. 1, Ethan drove the shuttle forward. For the second time in their lives, they entered a collapsing world together. This time, neither intended to be rescued. The rescue shuttle passed through the command vessel's shield with less than half a second to spare. Its hull screamed as gravitational pressure dragged sparks across the cockpit. But Ethan held the controls steady until the black surface opened ahead of them. That looks like an entrance, Lyra said. That looks like a wall. Humans are known for improvisation. We prefer the term unexpected engineering. Ethan fired the shuttle's emergency thrusters. The vessel struck the opening hard enough to tear away one wing, then slid across a cavernous hangar filled with dormant machines. Metal shrieked beneath them. Captain Feathers was thrown from the navigation console and landed upside down against the window. Landing quality unacceptable, he announced. Ethan unfastened his harness. You're welcome to fly us home. I withdraw my criticism. They entered the command vessel while the battle raged outside. The interior had no corridors in the ordinary sense. Walls shifted around them, creating passages only when Lyra approached. Ancient circuitry responded to the royal patterns in her blood, illuminating beneath her feet like veins awakening inside a dead creature. Veyra covered the rear with his rifle. The network is guiding us. No, Lyra said. It is trying to separate us. The floor split without warning. Ethan caught Lyra's arm before she fell into a shaft filled with rotating energy rings. Veyra fired into the closing wall, forcing it open long enough for them to cross. Captain Feathers flew over the gap. Flight remains superior to legs. You spent half your life falling off tables, Ethan said. Historical details are unnecessary. They reached the central chamber as the weapon aimed at Solaris reached full charge. At its center floated a column of white light surrounded by millions of moving symbols. Faces appeared inside it, dead rulers, generals, and scientists reconstructed from archived memories. The network spoke through all of them. Conflict preserves civilization. Lyra stepped forward. Conflict preserved your control. Unity produces instability. Unity produces choice, Ethan said. That's what frightens you. The chamber filled with images of Veyra, Telos, and thousands of forgotten battlefields. The network offered Lyra command again. With one decision, she could control both fleets, erase opposition, and rule without challenge. For a moment, Ethan saw the weight of the offer in her face. She could end every war. She could also end freedom. Lyra removed the broken royal pendant she had carried since childhood and placed it inside the light. My family helped create you, she said. I will not inherit their fear. The system rejected the command. Weapons unfolded from the walls. Veyra opened fire while Ethan pulled apart the nearest control panel. Lyra connected her hands to the royal interface, allowing blue energy to race through the lines beneath her skin. The network fought her, flooding her mind with false memories of humans destroying her people. Ethan reached through the light and gripped her wrist. Look at me. She did. Remember Veyra. Her breathing steadied. She remembered smoke, a broken robot, and one human who had entered a collapsing tunnel because a child was crying. The illusion shattered. Captain Feathers flew directly into the exposed synchronization core. Lyra's eyes widened. What are you doing? Performing decorated officer duties. You are not decorated. This appears to be an administrative oversight. He drove his claws into the core. Energy burst through his body. Ethan pulled Lyra away as the chamber began collapsing. The network's voice fractured. Without division, survival cannot be guaranteed. Ethan looked toward the dying light. Neither can anything worth surviving for. Lyra gave the final command. The core shut down. Across the border, every black ship stopped at once. Some drifted powerless. Others collapsed into dust as their artificial gravity failed. The beam aimed at Solaris vanished seconds before firing. The command vessel began tearing itself apart. Ethan carried Captain Feathers while Lyra and Veyra fought their way back to the damaged shuttle. The robot's body was scorched, one wing missing, his voice reduced to a faint crackle. Human, he whispered. Yes? Your carrying procedure remains unacceptable. Ethan laughed despite the alarms. They escaped aboard an Aurorian fighter sent through the failing shield. Behind them, the command vessel folded inward and disappeared in a silent flash. Months later, the first permanent human Aurorian council gathered on Solaris. The truth about the continuity protocol had been released without censorship. Generals resigned, governments fell, families on both sides finally learned who had truly destroyed their colonies. Peace did not arrive cleanly. There were protests, arguments, and enough diplomatic meetings to make Ethan briefly miss active combat. But no fleet returned to the border. Veyra became commander of the Joint Defense Force, though he continued insisting humans were reckless. Reyes agreed with him. Captain Feathers received a royal medal and a new wing, then complained that the medal affected his aerodynamic balance. Lyra remained queen, but she dissolved the secret powers held by the throne and gave the council authority no ruler could quietly take back. She had grown beyond the frightened child who waited for someone to save her. She had become someone willing to save others from the mistakes of her own bloodline. Ethan returned to the Rescue Academy, where human and Aurorian cadets trained together. He no longer taught them only how to enter burning ships. He taught them when to question orders, when to trust strangers, and why mercy was not the opposite of strength. During the first anniversary of the peace, Lyra visited the academy. Before thousands of cadets, she returned the silver badge Ethan had given her on Veyra. You told me to keep it until we met again, she said. Ethan closed her fingers around it. Keep it a little longer. Captain Feathers raised his restored wing. Emotional scene detected. Recommend applause. The entire hall laughed, then rose to its feet. Ethan looked at Lyra and understood at last that he had not merely saved a future queen. On Veyra, he had saved proof that hatred could be interrupted. And years later, She had returned the favor for an entire galaxy.